Joining me at the studio at Tech Town is none other than Brandy, the manager with 2 E's, because, well, there's extra importance to you, I think. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on, first off, welcome to Daily Detroit.
Thank you so much.
One of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because so rarely do I get the mix of real talk and real advice. Wow. So often when I'm dealing with online creators about certain topics, I'm like, okay, that gets clicks, but that ain't right. Mm-hmm. With you, I love how you relate to people and how you also help people with their journey going forward in making, like, just having a better job, having a better career, looking out for number one, which is themselves, but in a very professional and like kind way, if that makes sense. I mean, sometimes the advice isn't so kind on their bosses, but it's better for all involved.
That's right.
So Brandy, what gave you the idea to start doing this on social media?
Well, so I was at work one day, and it was during the time where people were like, I'm a wife. Of course I do such and such and such. It was like that trend that was happening on social media. And I was like, I could do one that says I'm a millennial manager because I'm pretty cool, actually. I hear it from my staff. I hear it from the doctors. And I'm like, I don't stress the small things, and the team really loves that. And so I just went and said all the things that I try to do for my team, that I don't care if you're late. Can you bring me a hash brown? Because I love hash browns and a coffee if you're going to be another 15.
Because in reality, you're a manager.
I am.
And so that gives you a lot of experience to talk about this stuff. What were you seeing out there, with hiring or whatever, where you're like, I need to start sharing these stories?
So what made me start was my own experiences that I've had in the past, like with bad managers. And that day I recorded that video was like, we could change the narrative around management in particular, and just empower the employees. That was like my whole thing is, we should empower them. And at first it was just to be a funny video, I swear.
So which specific video is the one you are referring to? Because I feel like I've watched the entire oeuvre at this point.
So it was the Millennial Manager. Of course, I don't care if you're running late for work as long as you bring me a hash brown. Mm-hmm. And it was like the first video that I posted as a Millennial Manager, because originally I was a mom creator and I got bored. I got so bored with it, and I think the reason was because it was everyone doing kind of similar things, and I had a job. I have been a manager for about 2 years, and I'm like, I don't even talk about my career on social media. I just solely focus on motherhood, and this is a whole other side of me professionally where I'm excelling, I'm doing great, and I want to make sure that I show that side. And when I recorded the video, it was simply to do the trend. And then people started asking me questions, and I had answers to the questions that they have asked, because I've been in management. I've worked as a team lead. I've worked as a front desk person. I started out doing that. I was a receptionist. That was my very first job starting into the office space, was as a receptionist.
So it sounds like you found something that wasn't just entertaining, but of service.
Yes.
And when did you decide to pick up the podcast? Because that's where I love social media stuff, but obviously I host a podcast.
Yes.
And I'm a little selfish in that regard. You went through whether it was answering people's emails, which I thought was great, or sometimes a direct conversation. Recently you did one about interview tips,
yes,
which I thought was really great.
Thank you.
So how did you find podcasting?
I had recorded a video, and the person was like, I love your voice. I could listen to you all day. Please create a podcast. And I was like, yes. And then I recorded that video and was like, I'm going to start a podcast. And I started it on August 30th was the first episode. And now we're 50,000 downloads in.
That's amazing.
August 30th. Yes.
That is awesome.
Thank you.
I am so glad. I'm so glad to see that success. And I'm also, one of the reasons you're here is that success is happening. You're right here in Metro Detroit.
I am.
And so Has anything about being local kind of, been different or something that you've helped add to your experience?
Yeah, I feel like the city of Detroit just has like a spirit. I feel like it's a spirit like none other. We are actually from Tallahassee, Florida.
Okay.
And we
Isn't
moved
that the home of T-Pain?
It is the home of T-Pain. Yes. I love that you know that. But yeah, so we're from Tallahassee and we moved here about 2 years ago. And I immediately got my job. And when we were in Florida, I was a creator then, and there just wasn't a lot of opportunity in Tallahassee. It is a smaller location. And coming here is where we found, of course, my amazing career. And then my husband has an amazing job. And just the overall welcoming feeling that we have received in the city has been just amazing. And my family is originally from here, so I am technically a Detroiter, but I feel like even more so now than just being born here.
I wonder if that energy is just keeping it 100.
Yeah.
Right?
That real.
Yeah.
That's for real. Seriously.
Let's talk about what some of the tips are that you have for people. Because,
Yeah.
I encourage people to go check out the Millennial Manager. There's hours of content. There's all kinds of fun stuff. But specifically, this is a time where there's a bit of transition happening in Metro
Right.
Detroit.
Right.
There are people in various states. There's some folks who can't find jobs or having trouble breaking into their career or things like that. So do you mind if I ask you a few questions?
Absolutely.
My number one thing is that there's a number of people who are having trouble mid-career.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
let's say you're in your 40s or 50s. You've found some success, but there have been a lot of realignments and changes in the auto industry right now,
Yes.
or around technology because of AI and other stuff. And people are finding themselves, without jobs. I was talking to somebody I know who's like never not had a job.
Right.
And he's like, my contract rolls off near the beginning of the year and I don't know what I'm going to do. And this guy's super talented. He actually answered phone calls while we were having coffee because he was like, I got to stay plugged in and do my thing.
Yeah.
There is a lot. I know other people that have been off of work for 3 months, 6 months, a year in that mid-career where they feel stuck, where it's like they have a whole bunch of skills. They've done a whole bunch of things, but what do they do? What do they do next?
Yeah.
So what are some of your thoughts with that?
So I will say when you're putting together your resume, do not list anything past 10 years. That is my God honest opinion for people who are in that transition period. So 40, 50, even 60-year-old people are looking for that career transition or they're in the transition, right? So anything past 10 years is useless. And the reason why is because technology has evolved and transitioned so much just in the last 5 that 10 is kind of dating us. We remember what phones looked like 10 years ago, right? So everything is totally
I liked
different.
my Nokia brick. I played Snake on that thing every day.
Snake. Oh my gosh.
Okay, maybe that's a little bit more than 10 years. I'm showing my age. I used to have a beeper. My first job, I had a beeper.
I do remember the Nokia. I had a straight Nokia phone with the game Snake on it, and you had to buy minutes. Our children do not believe that we used to have to buy minutes.
Oh, and if I had a date coming, I had to like stock up my minutes. It's a thing.
You remember it used to be free after 7 or free after 9?
Oh, yeah.
They have no idea what that was like.
The challenges that we went through, the technology challenges.
Yes.
Or texting people with the T9.
Oh my God, T9 texting. You used
people
to take
don't-
me down.
If people don't know, it used to be the phones didn't have keyboards or screen or like touch screens. So you'd have to hit like the 2 key a bunch of times to get a word out.
Yes.
And so it was the 2 and the 4 key and like make all the things happen. So that was, that was a thing. So that actually is a good reminder about that. What about getting their resume shaped up as far as presentation or interview skills or things like that?
So when it comes to your resume, you always want to make sure, like we said, to cut off those previous 10 years. I also recommend not putting the dates that you worked at a company. So let's say you worked at a company from 1993 to 1998, right? Don't list that. List 5 years. that you have been at that job or that you were at that place, if you wanted to list a time frame that you worked at a company. Now, again, I would not list anything past 10 years because a lot of things have changed and evolved. So I would not go past that. But when you're putting together your resume, you want to focus on the time frame that you've been at some of those the companies. And then also when you're putting together your resume for your schooling, for education, we know that that can date you easily. So what I do is do not list that. Do not list the years that you graduate or the time that you graduated. All they need to know is that you graduated. That's it. It doesn't matter when. That's not important. And then I also recommend for people who are in that transition phase to take courses. Google through Coursera, they have so many courses. They have Udemy is another good platform.
So it doesn't necessarily need to be like a boot camp or something like that. Because one of the concerns I have...
Overthinking it.
Okay, really? Because one of the concerns sometimes I have with the boot camps is, okay, I'm going to spend whatever weeks, 12, 14 weeks, spend a bunch of money, and no real guarantee on the back end. And let's keep it real. If you're in your 30s or your 40s, you got bills, or you have family, or you have other responsibilities. It's a really big sacrifice to spend 8 hours a day doing something, especially if you're not sure if it's going to be out the other side. It's a different thing if it's your employer working with you or something like that. But I do have a fear. I'm not saying that all of them are bad, but that's something I think about, that it's all right in your mind. Like, let's do courses that are accessible.
Do courses that you can do in your free time. And then a lot of people, pride is the biggest problem that I see. And it doesn't matter what age you're in. If you have a issue where the ego is stopping you from taking a job because you want to hold out from the job, you're going to miss out on a lot of vital networking opportunities. You could also miss out on being able to pay your bills. Let's just be honest. Like, some money is better than no money.
So even if you are taking a job that's, say, a 20% pay cut or something like that, adjust your life or do things to make that happen. I know that can be really hard, though, for people.
It can be really hard, but it's not impossible. It's not impossible to do. And so you have to think about what the end goal is, right? You have a goal. And first of all, for those, I did a episode a while back talking about setting goals. So career-wise, where do you want to see yourself? And in order to do that, you're going to have to make some sacrifices. Nothing good comes without a sacrifice. You have to lay some things on the line. So if you're looking to transition into a new career, you need to do a complete overhaul of that resume. Make sure you're leaving dates out if you don't want to date yourself. Just specifically list the times that you were employed at these companies. List your skills, refresh them is another thing. A lot of times we get stuck in a job and we're like, I know how to do these things. Well, we need to update our skills and abilities.
And there's some people I know that have been there 5, 10, 15 years. And some employers, though I understand the comfortableness of wanting to do that, that also can kind of stagnate your resume. So maybe it's even more important to surface all of the skills you did and name and claim them.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. Because you can get stuck in a role. You never want to get too comfortable. And sometimes when you're in a position, you're there for a long time, you can end up resenting the role. You resent the position because you have already beat the bosses. You can't go past this. There's nothing past it. There are salary caps in place. There are promotion caps in place. So you can't really excel past this role and position. You start to hate it. And then it starts to reflect in your work. And so that's a big red flag to your boss. Like, there is something, this person is on a decline. So it's better to get out while you're on top and leave while you have a better experience with your employer.
I have a story around that I want to share with you.
Yeah.
That I found that I was at the top of a role position, not the top of the company, but knowing my skill set and who was ahead of me and the age of who was ahead of me, I knew I was going nowhere.
Yeah.
So I started making my exit plans. I even talked to my boss like, hey, I will gladly help out, but you can see where I'm at. I can see where I'm at. Let's transition, right?
Yeah.
And I did that, and it was great. And, kudos to the company for doing that, right? But it was 3 months later, I get a call on my cell phone, and it's an executive vice president, and I can now tell this story because they're now retired.
Yeah.
And they were yelling at me on the phone. And I'm like, what is
saying
going
what?
on? They're like, where is this project? Why aren't you signing off on these benchmarks? And I said, Alan, I don't work for you anymore. What do you mean? I don't work for you anymore. You probably shouldn't yell at me because I don't work here anymore. I left like nearly 90 days ago. And he was like, what do you mean? Nobody told me this. And he was like continuing the fume. And I was like, I don't work here. I wish you the best of luck with this project.
Yeah.
I really can't help you.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, then I realized like at that time, it was like, oh, even my direct boss had not told the rest of their colleagues that I had left. And I realized how many loose ends there were. And I'm like, you know what? I did the right thing.
Well, not only that, think about this man didn't even know that you didn't work there anymore. It lets you know where you are on their tier list, how important you are to them. You were only important because he needed something from you. Mm-hmm. So if you didn't have to secure anything for him or give him any documentation, reports, KPIs, whatever the role was, if you didn't have to give him that, it would have been now. Okay. It would have been now until he looked up and realized that. And so that's why I always tell people to prioritize yourself in these work environments, because you put your job first all the time. You put you second. And then the minute that you are not performing, the minute that you are not meeting whatever goals, they're not going to try to have a, one-on-one that's positive. Mm-hmm. More than likely, the one-on-one is going to result in you being terminated eventually.
And most likely, by the way, if you're getting a performance improvement plan, get that resume ready.
Baby. Okay.
Like, be real about how people are treating you out there. And I don't mean that in like a
but that's for
terrible
real.
way, but you have to take care of yourself.
Yes, you do. Because the minute that a PIP touches your desk,
I watched PIPs get written. I'm like, every single one, not a single one did not end up in somebody leaving.
Because they have already made up their mind. And most of the time when a PIP comes, it is something that you cannot even meet. The metrics are so high, and they do it by the design. It's really on purpose.
Take that as your whatever your PIP is, 90 days, 60 days, whatever. Take that as it's time to go warning.
That's your warning, okay? And you know when it's coming, because if they start paying a little more attention to you than what they normally have been, you're kind of on their scope. Your boss is reaching out to you about deadlines all the time, and somehow, right, they're always worried about you. That PIP is coming. So you might as well get ready. Sometimes you have about 6 months before a PIP really gets to you, because you have to be paying attention to what the pattern is of your boss. If they beef up the requests, they start micromanaging, they start focusing like really hard on you, that means that PIP is coming down the line. So you just have to be able to be in tune with that and know what's coming.
I've seen so many people be a little too confident in their jobs. Where they're like, oh, it'll never I've had so many conversations. It won't happen to me, or it's fine, or whatever. And you have to, I know it sucks. And I know a lot of people love the idea of, well, I worked at a company for 25 years and you get the watch and security. There is no security. And they're in the corporate world. There is no, and even in the smaller business world, you always have to, you don't have a choice but to look out for yourself constantly. And I hate to like make that an anxiety inducing thing for people,
but it's
because a lot
reality.
of people don't want to deal with that, but that is a factual reality.
That is a reality. And let me tell you, anytime that there is money exchanging hands, there is no loyalty. Okay? You're not going to work for your company for free. If they don't have the money to pay you, you're going to stay home and find something else. There is no loyalty, and companies need to realize that you're not going to find that in employees. You're not. And so they're looking for something that's not real. That's the employer side of it. And then for the employees, you have to realize that there is no allegiance to you. The minute that somebody is able to do that job better than you, cheaper than you, do you think that they're going to keep you? Absolutely not. You're going to be the first one out.
But Brandy, there's a foosball table.
Child, please. Okay.
I had a manager of mine tell me a good little secret once that if you see a pool table or a foosball table or a bunch of games, it's a trap.
Oh yeah.
That is a trap.
You ever seen Percy Jackson when they go into the lore, like in Las Vegas? I don't know if you ever seen that movie, but they go into this siren den basically, and they're doing all these things to keep you distracted, and you look up and a week has passed and you don't even know. You're supposed to be on this mission to find something. You can't even remember what you're supposed to do. That's what happened when you go into jobs like that. They act like you're a family member. They try to seduce you with the things that they can do for you. And you look up, 10 years of your life has passed by. You have not done any work on yourself. You have not matured in the role. You have not taken any courses. You have not even betted on yourself to start a business if that's what you really want to do. Or maybe you want to continue your education or move on to a different career field. So you've gotten in there and gotten comfortable, and the sirens have made it wonderful for you, and you look up and so much of your life has passed by.
Which leads me to the thing I almost forgot to ask you about, which is interviews and interview tips. Whether it's you're earlier in your career or you're doing that transition that I was talking about, what are some interview tips and common pitfalls people make?
So as a hiring manager, I'm gonna tell you the number one thing I ask people: tell me about yourself. And what that does is people are so ready to reveal everything because they think I really want to know. I don't. I just want to know what you can do.
It's not about being interesting or whatever. It's about
the
job.
What can you do? What can you do in the job? But they start to explain why they're leaving their current company, the negative experience that they've had at the company, the negative experience that they have with their boss, with their maybe the CEO, if they interact with the CEO or directors, or maybe they have bad experiences with the employees, the coworkers there. And they start explaining everything. And what it does is it's a red flag in the interview. It's drama. It's drama. Immediately, if I ask you to tell me about yourself and the first thing you do is to tell me all these personal things that I should not know, it's drama.
In most industries, it is so small that I liken it to a deck of cards, especially here, like in the media world. There's so many people I've seen how many times, and I love you. I love y'all. And I've seen you at the bar or whatever.
Yeah.
They've been through 5 or 6 jobs or whatever, but it's like we're all in a deck of cards and you do not know who you are going to be played with next because you don't know the rules of the game or whatever. That you could be in another suit, another set of lineups, whatever, but you could be played with any other cards in your industry at any time.
Yeah.
So be smart about what you say about people.
That's what I'm saying. Be careful of what you put down, because the minute that you say one thing, right, you go in and say, well, I have 3 kids and I'm married. And they're like, time restriction. Immediately. They think that you're not available. You're not going to be able to work the hours that they need because you have children.
Which is awful, but it's also
terrible, but it's the reality.
And that's what I like about your content is that you are keeping it truthful with people because we could say, it's not legal to think it's a lot of these things are not legal. And sometimes a lot of these employers push on the boundaries of what's legal all of the time.
Oh, yeah.
Because sometimes they don't know better. Sometimes they're just trying to do it.
They know.
Sometimes
they know.
They know.
They know. And I had a meeting this morning, a consult, and the young lady was explaining to me the situation that was going on at work. And I said, well, baby, you are misunderstanding that right and wrong has nothing to do with the legality of the situation. That doesn't matter. Whether you think it was right or wrong or indifferent, at the end of the day, they did it the legal way. They crossed their T's, they dotted their I's. You did not. You did not make sure you documented any instances of possible discrimination at work. You didn't make sure that you documented any instances of possible retaliation. So when that company comes back and they say, well, we can fire you at will, you have nothing.
Well, and especially in today's world, and it sucks, but you have to put mental energy toward this. I know a lot of people don't want to.
You better.
But you have to constantly. And it's this extra overhead and it's anxiety and it's stress. And I think it's part of the reason why so many people feel so strongly they do. I will sometimes interview leaders and different people on this show.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll run into situations where I'll be like, well, why doesn't anyone want to work anymore? And I think it's because the contract has been broken.
Oh, yeah.
The cultural contract has been broken. And there needs to be some soul searching on the way. Why is that? And when when you have the situations you have, we're kind of like in this spiral right now that it's not healthy, but it is where we're at.
And I think the reason why it's like that is because employers are looking for one thing, right? They're looking for employees who want to work. But they're also some of them are looking for employees that they can abuse. Let's just be for real. They're not looking for people who are going to have boundaries. They're not looking for people who are going to have allegiance to themselves. They're only looking for people who are going to benefit them to do a job. And the problem that employees are having is they want a company to care about them. You are expecting feelings from a corporation. You cannot. And a lot of times we want to save the world, but you're not Superwoman when you go to work. You're not there to save the workplace. You're there to do a job. And the reality is that employees have to realize that as we're going into work, we're not there to save a situation or to, speak up for everything to be the way we want it to be, because there are some situations that you are not going to be able to change as one person. Like I get a lot of comments from people saying, this is capitalistic mindset and all this other stuff. Well, baby, you need capital to live in a society. Do you not? I don't know nobody that's surviving and thriving without money. You have to have it. And so what I'm teaching people is that you need to be able to play the game at their level. You need to know what you're walking into. Do not feel like a corporation is going to care about you. They don't.
Now, I have had some amazing bosses and mentors over the year, but I went through multiple roles with them and knew them outside of work.
Yeah.
And I had a great opportunity to do that and this happens often in the communications field where it's like, oh, I knew you were good on my team 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Will you come back? But they didn't have allegiance to the company either. Right? They were just like, I know you can do a job and I want to bring you in. And that kind of networking, I think, is really valuable. I think people underestimate, and I know people don't like it, but that networking and that who you know really matters and helps you in that resume stage. And I know people don't want to think that, but I do think it matters, like who you know.
They don't want to do the work. That's it. Networking is work.
It is. It is an extra
job.
It is actually network is majority work if you look at it. Just like diet is 3/4 diet, but that's a whole nother thing.
No, that is so serious. That's the realest thing ever. You have to actually put forth the effort. And so a lot of people, they have the resume, they have the experience, but it's this other element that they're struggling with, and that's networking. If you don't put yourself in a room where other people are making those decisions, who they're going to hire for the company, what roles they're going to create, you're not even in the space with those people or even rubbing elbows just a little bit. You take yourself out of the race. Sometimes it is really about who you know. My boss is one of the most, he changed my mindset when it came to networking, was working for him, because he is such a networker. He knows people everywhere in every situation. I'll call him and ask him something. He's like, yeah, I got a guy. Give me a second. I'll figure it out. And that's what made me change my mind when it came to that, is when I started working for him, I would ask him, okay, I need to get this for this location. I need to do this for this location. He says, well, I got a guy. Henry Schein is one of the biggest dental suppliers in the country, and he knows somebody at Henry Schein. So whenever I need something, now I have a plug to this guy.
Right.
I know exactly who to call to get what I need. And shout out to you, actually, because he's pretty amazing. Okay. I can text him anything that I need. I need someone. I need a tech. I need this at this location. He's pretty awesome.
So what's next?
What's next for me?
Yeah. What's next? What are we looking forward to?
I want to expand the podcast. I feel like the Millennial Management podcast could really be a show. I'm thinking more along the lines of having a weekly syndication or maybe an everyday syndication, where we have some top CEOs. We have the people who are making the decisions in the room and able to discuss what we're missing as employees, right? What are we not grasping? Because there's a lot of people who are wonderful in the role, but maybe they're missing some key elements. So what are these companies looking for exactly, so that you can make sure that you're in that space? So I'm looking to expand a little bit more in that field and have a A radio show, maybe, possibly, because I love hosting. I think it's awesome. And then just being out in the space and helping people secure careers. That is something that I really love.
Well, Brandy, the Millennial Manager, where can people find you?
On social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Brandy, the Millennial Manager. And then the podcast, the Millennial Management Podcast, is on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, and Amazon. Yeah.